like to reconvene the meeting of the Ville County Council. This is from the Tuesday, October 12th, 2021 meeting. If we would, let's go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Otter, can I call in the roll, please?
Mr. Thacker. Mr. Norris.
Present.
Ms. Thies.
Here.
Ms. Weger. Ms. Wilson.
Here.
Mr. Thompson.
Here.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Here. Thank you, Mr. Auditor. Moving along here, we recessed the meeting last Tuesday to reconvene today at 3 o'clock. The discussion was regarding the final reading of the 2022 annual budget of Ville County. So we will pick up there. I assume everybody has a copy of the agenda. Is that correct? So we can pick up there, and I will open the floor for discussion at this time.
From the public or from officials or from?
Elected official. We're discussing the final reading of the 2022 budget.
I'd like to make a comment.
Sure. Councilwoman Wilson.
There have been numerous times throughout all this that I sat through, I've mentioned this many, many times. I sat through all but one of the budget meetings, and no disrespect to anyone on the budget committee, particularly the new people, but they did the best that they could given the guidance that they received. And I didn't have a voting say, but I had serious issues with many of the decisions that they came to recommend to this full body. When the full council received by email the budget less than an hour before the Sunshine meeting a couple of weeks ago, we had very little time to go over it. We had the written version sitting here when we went into the meeting with no time to review it ahead of time. I went through that budget from the Sunshine meeting till the meeting last week, department by department, line by line. I saw all the fluff. I saw all the cherry picking of departments that received everything they asked for, other departments that didn't receive the same scrutiny and didn't receive the things that they asked for. I have 3 pages of discrepancies that I mentioned several times too that need clarification at least and analyzed, because a lot of those things do not need to be in this budget. I'm here for the taxpayers. I'm not here to make friends. I'm probably going to lose a lot of people that, but I'm going to have my own self-respect because I'm doing what needs to be done here. Another issue that I mentioned numerous times while screaming into a vacuum, I asked numerous times, I know the president asked several times, every department head was required by state statute to file a Form 1 budget request. It's the responsibility of the auditor to supply the council the budget requests by August 20th. I believe that the auditor with that responsibility should have a higher level of responsibility because he's responsible for everybody's budget being submitted on time. We have yet to receive the Form 1 from the auditor's office, and I don't understand why they're being above the law on this. As council, we have a huge responsibility. We're the financial arm of the county, and it is beyond, it's not about extra money for me. But I don't know if you're all aware that the responsibility, we get less than the amount that the auditor has requested in a pay increase annually. By default, his chief deputy is bumped up substantially as well. This for an office that feels they don't have to do what the other departments have to do. They've asked for extra employees. They say that they're understaffed and overworked, and yet they had 5 of their employees at every single budget meeting. They had time for that. I'm going to demand a Form 1 from the auditor's office by next Monday, and if it's not received, I'm going to refer this to the State Board of Accounts and see what they have to say about it. That said, along with everything and we were misdirected last week to try to look at only the 280 or 330,000 over last year, and we were guided away from the fact that the 2022 budget with 4.75% increase for salaries is $4.92 million worth of expenditures over revenue. I don't know what corporation, what household operates that way and considers themselves financially sound. It just makes no sense to me. That said, I want to make a motion to rescind the 2022 budget with the 4.75% employee raise so that we can properly and intelligently make a sound decision. There's a motion on the table.
Mr. Efter, do you have any guidance as it pertains to that motion?
It is not. Excuse me, all due respect, I'll be quiet.
So I think probably the motion to reconsider is the appropriate motion, I think. And in any case, if it's a motion to rescind, I think it's in the nature of a motion to reconsider. You can't rescind it without reconsidering it. That being the case, I think that it needs to be made by a member of the prevailing side, which I understand. I think Brenda voted no question last week, so I think it's in order for anybody else who had voted yay, and I think in either case it needs a second. So.
Mr. President, can I respond to that?
Councilman Wilson, yes.
According to Robert's rules, first of all, point of order. When a member of council is disrespected by either another council member or anyone else in the audience, I would respectfully request, this has gone on too long. It happens quite frequently, and it needs to stop. And I would like to respectfully request that you, as the leader of this group, either reprimand that person or evict them from the room when it happens. It's not necessary. It demeans the entire council when it's allowed. Okay, having said that, looking at Robert's rules, I researched, and what I am actually asking for is a motion to rescind. And a motion to amend would fall under the category of reconsideration. A motion to rescind is a motion to cancel or annul the previously adopted item. And that's what my intention is, to rescind the 2022 budget with the 4.75% employee, so that we can go back and discuss things more thoroughly. I know that sounds like reconsidering, but it is I want the slate wiped clean, I want it canceled and annulled. That's my intention.
So your motion remains intact, correct?
Yes.
So with that, we have a motion on the floor. We have guidance provided from council attorney. With the motion on the floor, is everybody clear what the motion is on the floor? Any questions? Yes, Councilwoman Thies.
From what I understand, again, to clarify the procedure, as it stands, as we proposed at the last meeting, the salary ordinances, things like that can be addressed still, the concerns that Councilwoman Wilson is addressing at a meeting where we do salary, things like that. Am I correct in seeing that? Or is that a misunderstanding?
I think that's correct, if you're asking.
So it's my understanding today, based upon where we stand prior to a motion, was today would be to discuss those personnel-related items. The raise, the sliding scale, and those, the additional employees, those items that were specifically related to the salary ordinance. Obviously, with this motion, it could potentially change things. Previous to that motion, that was my understanding. Is that fair, Mr. Effner?
Yes.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Marie, I hope?
I think so. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that there's still work to be done, and a large portion of that addressed. As somebody who was a part of that committee, I understand some of the concerns that were raised, by Councilwoman Wilson and that we discussed last Tuesday. But also looking at that, and the discussion of all the meetings that we had, things like that, I do feel comfortable. There were times that some departments wait years without getting some of their needs met. And I do feel, I know that, there's concerns, and there are, any of us, I'm sure, can look at things we agreed or didn't disagree on. But I felt there were a lot of things that I was comfortable with as well. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Councilwoman Wilson, or, I'm sorry, I apologize. That's who you are.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Wilson, yes.
I'd like to respond to that.
Sure.
My issue is not solely with salaries. My issue is with the 2s, 3s, and 4s, and some of the other items that were slid in or my issue is not only with salaries, it's with some of the 2s, 3s, and 4s. And that's where I think we were misdirected a little bit last week to focus only on this, making it only being about salaries, and that is not the case. We are $4.92 million of expenditures over revenue with the budget as it sits right now. That, to me, is unacceptable. And to flippantly say, well, if we're short, we'll pull it out of the operating fund. What happens when the operating fund is depleted? You raise taxes. That's unacceptable to me. And I don't think we have the amount in the operating fund to cover it, my opinion, so.
Thank you, Councilwoman Wilson.
Thank you.
So, we have a motion on the floor. I think everybody's clear what the motion is. Is that fair? Okay. Is there a second?
President Loudermilk, before we move forward with that, is it okay to ask Councilwoman Wilson. She had talked about those 3 pages. Can we discuss those 3 pages before we move forward with any motions?
That's going to be subsequent to this motion going through.
I would say we have a motion, and now it's time to call for a second. If it achieves a second, then we can discuss that. Generally, the order of business with these, with things like this is to have discussion, open the floor for motions, and then if you receive a motion, a second, and we have further discussion. I think we've kind of gotten away from that a few times, and it kind of upsets the order of things a little bit, but nonetheless, that's where we're at right now. So with that, is there a second? Councilman Wager?
I'm just going from the, excuse me, I think it is on this time, sorry. You know, I've just gone over this, a question that came up not very long ago, so I just reviewed my synopsis of the parliamentary procedure and Robert's rules, and according to my synopsis, a motion. I view this as a motion to reconsider. It's a point that's been voted on, and you know, we're asking to revisit that, and I think that's in the nature of a motion to consider, and motion consider, I believe that it must be made by a member of the prevailing side. Now, that doesn't mean that anybody else who had voted positively to, in regard to the prior motion, certainly bring it up. You know, in my opinion, if, you know, you voted nay on that, make a motion.
So assuming that we proceed with Councilwoman Wilson's motion, then we find that that's a violation of parliamentary procedure. What's the upshot of that?
Well, that puts us in a you know, raise a question. I suppose anybody could you know, and I guess going back to, you know, if it's not covered in our rules, which it's not, you know, our rules indicate that Robert's rules of order apply. So that's what I reflect back to Robert's rules, at least in my, I've not done an in-depth study of this. You know, but based on what I have, I believe that it is in the nature of a motion to consider, and must be made by a member of the prevailing side of the prior motion. So I think that goes into question, you know, if vote to rescind it, I think that goes out of question.
Senate, are you finished? Councilman Wager?
Thank you.
So essentially, it comes down to interpretation, whether it's
Yes.
reconsider or rescind. And
Now,
if it is reconsider, then it has to be someone from,
prevailing side. Now,
okay. What about rescind? Is there any language on that?
well, I think there is. I believe there is. Brenda has showed me some language where it talks about rescinding, and flipping through that quickly, I didn't see anything about that. You know, the one thing I will say, you know, it seems to me, whether it's a motion to reconsider or a motion to rescind, it's gonna take a second to consider.
Correct.
Okay? So I would recommend, if you wanna consider it, someone else make the motion, and Brenda can make a second. And that resolves any potential problem.
Is that clear?
Excuse me. One more thing.
Councilman Wilson?
Thank you. It is a matter of interpretation, and the way I read it, there is a motion to rescind that is separate from a motion to reconsider or amend. And the motion to rescind incorporates canceling or annulling something previously adopted. And that's my intention, because there are so many issues. There were so many people that left this. Okay, excuse me, Mr. President. Exactly what I'm talking about is going on down there. She doesn't know what she's talking about. I am extremely disappointed in my other council members that feel a need to do that. Does it make you feel better? There were so many issues that didn't get discussed, and the meeting ran so long that everybody just wanted to get out of here. And so a motion was made, it was voted on, and I think that it was ill thought out at the very least. And my whole goal here is for us to try to get it right, because as it sits, it is not right. I could sit back and go, you know what? I was the lone person that voted no on this, and let the chips fall where they may. And if it turns out that it was a disaster, I could sit here and go, you know what? I was right. I told you. But I don't work that way. I am here to do the best job for the employees, the best job for the taxpayers, because that's what I'm here to do. And I'm going to do that to the best of my ability. And if it turns out in the end I'm not reelected next year because of it, so be it. The taxpayers lose, in my opinion, because I'm here looking out for them. And that's my sole reason for trying to get this right and making this motion. And if you turn it down, then you turn it down, and we move on, and I'll be able to say I told you so. I yield.
Thank you, Councilman Wilson. So yes. Councilwoman Thies.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, I got into my head. I thought at one point, and please let me know if I'm recollecting this wrong, it was a long night, that you had directed that you were comfortable with the 2s, 3s, and 4s of the budget. Am I not remembering that, or?
Funds not supported by property tax or lit.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Councilwoman Thies.
President Loudermilk,
Councilman Norris.
if Ms. Wilson's motion dies, then can we go back into discussion before anything else gets done? Is that correct, since we didn't discuss it prior?
Yeah, I think if the motion dies, the floor is still going to be open for discussion. I mean, we need to get through this, wherever that discussion is, and we need to have discussion to get us to some type of resolution. But if her motion dies, it just simply dies. And it doesn't just prohibits that motion from moving forward.
Right.
But that's it. Everything else we're still able to discuss anything like we would previously, I suppose.
I mean, I guess I feel like if she has multiple pages of things to discuss, and I know, Councilwoman Wilson, you said that after the motion you would discuss it, but if we could go ahead and discuss it after the motion dies, then maybe we can make a decision and move forward with everything after that.
I guess you could certainly have discussion about that, but absent an intention to reconsider, it's really a waste of time, quite frankly, I think, because if you're not going to reconsider, then you're just kind of spinning your wheels and discuss things that aren't going to be acted on potentially. And we have other things we have to act on. That's just my assessment, and if that's correct or not, but I don't know that it's worth the time to discuss right now, quite frankly. And I don't mean that in a bad way against Councilwoman Wilson for all her efforts, but at that point in time, you're going back to discussing the things that's we were talking about with Councilwoman Thies earlier. You know, the salary increase, the increases for elected officials, the additional employees, things of that nature. Councilwoman Wilson.
Point of information, I said I would discuss the 3 pages if my motion passed. If it doesn't pass, you guys passed it the way it is, and my discrepancies stay with me, and you'll find out as time goes on.
So we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Is there a second? It appears there is not a second. The motion will die.
President Loudermilk,
Councilman Norris.
I'd like to make a motion to reconsider the 2022 budget.
So we have a motion on the floor by Councilman Norris to reconsider.
I'll second that.
A second by Councilwoman Wilson. Any thoughts or discussion? Councilman Thacker?
Yes, thank you. I think it's perfectly fine to discuss it. I think if we have some guidance on what the motion's intent is, to reconsider is one thing, to open it up. But I think what parts of it we need to reconsider. I think, as I agree with you, that we were going to talk about salaries and wages. And if there's a specific part that we want to, as a budget committee, we have made ourselves available to anybody that had any questions on it for months. And since it's even the last 2 weeks, when they had the written copy, we had it a week before that in an email copy, that if there's any questions, we'd be more than glad to it. So I think we can discuss it as much as you want to. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would make a comment this time? Have any questions? So we have a motion on the floor by Councilman Norris, a second by Councilwoman Wilson. Mr. Otter, have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Thacker? Mr. Norris? Ms. Thies? Ms. Swager?
Aye.
Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye. So the floor is open. Councilwoman Wilson.
I would like to move that we amend the 2022 budget as presented last week with the 4.75% for employees to be back to the 2021 levels with some exceptions. Is that possible? If I can amend the budget or motion for that?
Yeah, I think it is, if you list the exceptions. Is that
Okay.
appropriate?
Right here. You ready? In the general fund, the clerk's office supplies of $45,000, line item number 21000, office supplies, $45,000 as requested. Line item 39200, service agreements, $8,500 as requested. the,
But can I just interrupt you
Sure.
real quick, please? So I just want to make sure everybody's clear on what you're driving at here. So, and if I'm misunderstanding, please correct. So what you're saying is the 2022 budget dropped down to 2021, and these are the exceptions you're saying
Yes.
right here? So what you said so far is you're saying approve those first two things from clerk.
the 45,000 as they requested it, not necessarily as was recommended by the budget committee.
Okay.
And the service agreements, 8,500 as they requested.
Okay. And that's 2100 and 39200.
Yes.
I just want to make sure everything's tracking here.
The sheriff's department,
Read slower, please.
sheriff's department,
I'm not nuts, I can write a little faster, don't be smart.
I'm very
Yeah, I
smart,
got that.
so I can't help it. Number,
Do we have a copy, maybe? Is
Yeah,
it
can
over-
we make sure everybody's a copy?
Need a copy of that so we can enter it, if we're going by what?
I need one. I've got copies of all kinds of stuff here.
examples like that, Mr. President.
It's like a bomb of papers. I got papers everywhere.
Is this or changes? 3 pages.
Yeah, we said we want 3
Does everybody have a copy that needs a copy? Yeah, let's make sure it records. I hate to do a take two, right? Everybody have a copy of the paperwork that Ms. Miller provided? So
If I continue?
just real quick, so I'm assuming this is the 3 pages that you made reference to last week and you were talking about earlier, and that was the 3 pages that Councilman Norris
Referred to one of the.
was referring to. Everybody has a copy, correct? Everybody get one down there. You guys have a copy as well, is that correct? So,
I'm still on top of
I know.
them. Okay.
So you can certainly, you have a motion on the floor, and it's to include all these exceptions, is that correct?
With one addendum that's not listed on here, or one additional one that's not listed on here at the moment.
Okay. So you can certainly go through each one. I mean, that's your right to do that. Or Mr. Effner would, since everybody has a copy, could it be reviewed, and just be entered in as a matter of record? Everybody take, without reading everything? I mean, it's your motion, but, I mean, I think you can bypass reading everything and then make your motion what it is with this document you've entered into record with, you say one amendment to this, or one addition, or whatever?
Addition to this.
Is it addition or amendment to something on here?
Addition.
Addition. So with one addition, that way you won't have to actually read all 3 pages, and,
That's fine.
I mean, if you're comfortable with that.
Sure. I'm assuming.
Is everybody following down there? What? She hasn't
Not
stated yet.
an
I just
amendment,
want-
it's an addition.
So that's where we're at. That's part, the motion is the 2021 with the document that everybody has. And then one additional item. What is that, Councilwoman Wilson?
The additional item is that the base compensation for all county employees, not including positions set by state agencies or the Indiana statute, be at 4% more than the 2021 base rate. That includes all employees, no sliding scales.
So,
All other items remain at the 2021 budget amount.
let's give 4 or 5 minutes. Is that fair to look over this and, I mean, and it'll lead to discussion, then we can look at it further if there's, I would assume it will lead to discussion. We can look at it further, give the opportunity to open up for more discussion. 'Cause I'm sure that it's a lot to look at right now. But it's probably cleaner to look at on paper than,
Mr.
Here's spoken.
Loudermilk,
yes,
for
Councilwoman, please.
point of reference, we have
Sure.
these sheets from last week that were account summaries, 3%, 4%, and 5%.
Right?
Would that be the best thing, because it has 2021 budget, 2022 budget, the difference. I mean, that's a starting point, but I guess what, we're being asked to do is kind of look at this last minute list, and now I want to go back and see what was cut compared to some of the others. So, or
Sure.
what was, because 2021 budget, multiple times in our hearings, we heard things that had not been met. So I need to look at that. But
Sure.
I'm wondering, as far as a starting point, would you recommend?
I think
this
that's
sheet?
probably, I think you're correct. That's probably a fair starting point. I mean, you're looking at 2021 adopted, and you have you're looking at the second column, 2022 adopted, and third column, well, actually fourth, I apologize. Fourth, the difference between 2021 and 2022. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good starting point. And I guess too, before we get too deep in the weeds, we have a motion. We could see if there's a second. If there's not a second, there's no sense in spending 15, 20, 30 minutes on going through this, only to not get a second. I mean, if there is a second, then we'll allow for time to review this. I'm not going to call for a vote, but
Excuse me, can I just make a little bit of a clarification? This would eliminate redundancy. It will eliminate things that were in the 2021 budget that moving forward shouldn't be in the 2022. They're just hanging there. For example, the cars and things like that we discussed earlier. It's a, I feel, fairly comprehensive list of discrepancies that no fault whatsoever to the Budget Committee. I just think that there was some misguidance, and I had no vote, so I didn't say anything. I just attended the budget hearings, and I saw some things, and the way that things were presented and then accepted that made me question, and there were a lot of questions, and many people that I talked to over the past week had no clue what we actually adopted last week. So that's my reason for bringing this up. There was no clarification last week.
President Loudermilk? Yes, can I ask just a question on before we're considering the second? From the time that the 2021 budget was adopted and we have those numbers, and then there's been a lot of appropriations in the last year, are any of those factored into this?
is that, did you copy it?
I'm sorry.
Could you ask that again, and maybe she
Yeah,
could
yeah,
clarify
so
what she's...
we have here, as Councilman Thies pointed out, we have the 2021 adopted budget, but since 21 budget was adopted, we've had a number of appropriations than the last year. Are those factored into the 2022 consideration of the 2021 budget with your exceptions?
I believe so.
How so?
Did you factor them in when you did the
Yes,
2022?
yes, we did.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
that's-
in
that-
essentially the same way. I looked at the budgets, and I looked at the things that were requested, and I looked at amendments, or not amendments, but appropriations from the 2021.
And the final thing is, do you have a grand total, what that number would be?
I do not.
So the
Substantially
criticism,
less than 4.92 million over budget.
the criticism that we received as a committee, that we only you've only had it in your hand for 2 weeks, and now we've got this now in front of us today. Okay. Thank you.
So, let's do this then. We have a motion. Is everybody clear what the motion is? I mean, for all practical purposes, I mean,
Excuse me, one other, just for an example, like, I'm saying that we take the 2021 budgeted, just on the example of the employees, the 2021 base salary that was in the budget for 2021, that's what I want to increase it to an additional 4%, not 7%, because there was 3% in the 2021, and then additional 4%. I want what the 2021 base salary was adopted, an additional 4% to that.
So additional 4% for 2022.
Correct, going into 2022. Across the board increase.
So I'll try to restate this, and if I do incorrectly, please let me know. So 2021 budget with an additional, on top of what the employees are receiving for 2021, an additional 4% raise for the employees. The exceptions on these 3 pages that you provided, it's entered into record.
And some of the things are as the departments requested, other things are as the budget committee recommended. The rest of the entire, every department, every other line stays at the 2021 level.
And then in addition to that, no sliding scale.
Yes, that's the 4% across the board, every employee, other than those that were not state mandated amount. Okay, compensation.
So, is everyone clear on that before I call for a second? And there's a lot of information. I just want to make, and this is kind of slow, but I'll make sure everybody's clear before we call for a second. All right, we have a motion on the floor by Councilwoman Wilson. Is there a second? Is there a second? I will second. Okay, we have a motion by Councilwoman Wilson, a second by Councilman Thompson. Offer this time for review and open the floor for any questions or comments, discussion.
You can ask me for a clarification if you need one.
Where it says as requested,
That's the part request.
okay, what I would like, is as requested, is that more than, like, you got stuff from them, or that's what I'm trying to figure out.
They asked for, okay, they asked for 45,000. I'm sorry, and the 2021 budget was 47,000.
So, okay, so as requested means that's what
They requested 45,000. The 2021 budget was 47,000, but they only asked for 45,000. So what's the reason for giving them 2,000 more than they asked for? Or 2,000 more than what was in the previous year's budget?
So this was as requested in 2021.
No, as requested in 2022. In 2022, they requested 45,000. They were budgeted 47,000. I'm taking this straight off of this, okay? I'm not talking to you, Marie, I know, okay. 2022, adopted that you guys, okay, they asked for 45,000. In 2021, their budget was $47,000. I saw little reason to give them 2,000 more than they had asked for.
I
And they're-
honestly, and I have to go through all of it one by one, but I don't remember ever giving more than they had requested.
It's right here.
Oh, okay, I'm,
It's in the paperwork Cheryl provided to us. And the 2021 budget was 47,000. So that's the exception to going back to the 2021 budget. If we go back to the 2021 budget, they get 47,000. They only asked for, and you recommended 45. So there was no reason there is no reason to keep it that one at the 2021 level, because it's 2,000 more than they requested and that you recommended.
oh, okay, so you're saying as they were, okay.
Okay, so, you see, yeah.
Okay, yes,
You
so
see where I am?
I'm just making sure because
Because we didn't give more than.
I didn't
anybody
give,
asked
yeah,
for.
I don't remember giving more than anyone asked for, so I just, that's
I'm-
all I wanted to clarify.
No, you
Okay.
didn't. It was the difference between if we adopt the 2021 budget and what the 2022 they requested and you recommended. It cuts the 2021 budget by $2,000 in that particular line item. Right, that's where you were.
Okay.
I am, because my motion says that we go back to the 2021 level. And the difference between the 2021 level and what was requested or what you recommended are these things, these items on this page. So if we go back to the 2021 level, which was less than the 2022 level, and with just apples to apples right there. But if you go back to the 2021 levels, these types of things need to be taken into consideration if we go back to the 2021 level.
Is it okay if I ask the auditor a question, Mr. Lonema? Sure. 2021 budget, when we talked about the 4.9, I think, or 4.7 million that Councilwoman Wilson had mentioned, what was it in 2021? Wasn't there a discrepancy then as well? But it was very similar, correct? Okay. Okay. Oh, from Sunshine?
And Jim, was it the 2021 was the same as the 2020? Remember, we used the 2020 for the 2021 plus the raise, right? On moderate, yeah.
I don't think that's referring to revenue over expenditures, though, or expenditures over revenue.
Is there a way to look that up?
What's that number?
And I could get that for you real quick.
Did you do that?
just call 10-minute break. Hey, you, break. You guys need to ask for a restroom, stuff like that, or that's wait on Tim, 5 minutes? 10 minutes?
I need
5 minutes?
probably a granola bar. I'm gonna have a crash and,
I've got a payday. I'll split it.
is
It's a regular one, no chocolate.
five's fine, let's just.
Hey, let's take a break. We'll resume at 4:15. It's 4:09.
I'm gonna go get my granola. I got it. I have allergies, so I get nervous about candy
Yeah,
bars.
peanuts.
I mean, you can have peanuts, or just tree nuts.
Well, I didn't intentionally lie. I don't find it in here after all. Yes, there is.
Everybody's gone in the building.
That's what you a year ago. I'll let someone else who doesn't want him to have a car answer that question because he wants public forum. People bring this up. stick it up and complain about his car being out of here and the $1,000 for his gas vehicle. And my opinion is, you come back next year and ask for an appropriation.
Do you have any other forms?
Oh, yeah, thanks. Well, thank you for getting us in this point, spot. Were it not for you, we wouldn't be here. Oh, shit.
Okay. Well, see, what I want to know is, what I want to know is what the numbers, see, we have, and there's,
What we were given last year? Yeah. Like, the other supplies, they recommend 0.
$6,000.
Yeah.
What were they? Why was it? Yeah, that's, I mean, you rented the You have notes on it? Sure.
I rearranged mine alphabetically.
Oh, did you?
They've got it ridiculous, and that was a big part of it.
Yeah.
Yes. I know. Info. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. No, I caught up with the foot, I'm gonna crush it.
Okay, we're going to resume the meeting. Did everybody get a handout that Mr. Bramwell provided? Title at the top is Ville County, Indiana Cash Investments Combined Statement 2020. Everybody get that? I think there was some discussion about that with Mr. Bramwell. I think he maybe discussed some of the figures he had and some different things during the break. So, let's take a direction here. Since we had this information that Mr. Bramble provided, part of the reason why we took the break as well, does anybody have any questions or have any comments they want to make regarding this document that you were just given? Councilman Wilson?
I'd like clarification to the answer that Mr. Thacker asked then, or whoever it was down there, I'm sorry, that asked for the reason for him getting this and what the difference is.
Who's it? Asking Mr. Bramble? What, you asking him to?
To clarify the answer,
Is?
yeah, answer the question that was asked, I guess, is the difference
That's
between the 2020.
what, that is your actual results of operations last year. To answer the question, what was the difference that you budgeted last year? You had it,
Expenditures over revenue.
you had approximately $3.7 million deficit budgeted.
3.7, bid vouchers, okay. And the 2022 budget as recommended was how much over?
What is it?
5 point what?
What is it? 4 point, how much was it? You got it there, Marie, don't you?
It was 5 point,
I don't think so. Currently, we're.
at the 4.75, it's 4.97. And reiterate again, I'm sorry, the 2021 was, what was that number again? I'm sorry,
3.7.
So we're starting with 3.7 million if we go back to the 2021 budget, and then we make these adjustments to it, we're far under the 4.92 million that we're over. One example I want to bring out, because it was questioned during the break, things like in the sheriff's category department, I put on this sheet as recommended. However, for example, other supplies for the sheriff's department, in 2021, they had $6,000 in their other supplies. They recommended zero. The recommended amount for 2022 was zero. That's, yeah. Okay, so, yeah. I mean, that was just, yeah. I tried to make my list as simplified as I could as far as discrepancies between the 21 and 22 budgets.
Sorry, Mr. Loudermilk.
Yes, Councilwoman, please.
There were kind of like what Calissa is saying, as we were going through things, there were times when we looked at the budgets to pull them from different areas. And so, again, I'd have to go through almost all the different things and try to find it. I mean, there's rationale and reasoning behind it. That's why we worked on it. But, to have this and to try to answer it without researching every single question, and then you want us to make a decision on this is doing more of a rush to us than what you had said that we had done. And so I'm obviously not comfortable looking at this, because I feel like a lot of these areas I could address and answer some of the things, but I have to go through all of this and all my notes to try to find out where we shifted stuff or how we did things and why. I also know that I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, the 2021 budget was a repeat of 2020. Is that correct? Okay, so when we heard in committee multiple people saying that these were things that they needed because they didn't get it in 2021 or in 2020, that is my concern as to going back to this. And again, I know some of it's as recommended, as requested, but I have to go through because I know that there's going to be some things that I feel in committee, we heard from department heads about things they needed, and I worry that they're going to get cut. And I know they could come back and do it as appropriations and whatnot, but that concerns me as well, because a lot of times then at appropriation, then things might not go as well either. And these are things that we did study and look at.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Wilson.
point of clarification, the 2021 budget was not the same as the 2020 budget. No, it was not the same at all as the 2021 budget, or 2020 budget.
There was modifications, but it was,
I think the repeat here was in 2020 budget, not 2021. It's either 2019 or 2020.
There were,
I think it was 19 for 20, wasn't it? Yeah, I think it was.
In any event, on a lot of the issues like like I was mentioning, and Melissa pointed out too, there are notes along the side here that like, for example, I'm just singling out the sheriff's department, as recommended by the budget committee. However, some of the things that were in this line item are funded by lit public safety or in the county general or, lit public safety. So I did take those kinds of things into consideration when I put as recommended.
And I appreciate you understanding notes. But again, I'm having even trouble like in beyond as requested, as recommended, and having. And this is fast. I'm sorry. This is fast, and what you have asked us to do is what you've complained about us doing. And so, to me, I'm trying to figure this all out and wrap my head around
Kind
it.
of feel good, huh?
No, but you were at all the meetings, and I know that. But you're throwing us all this at once, where we were a part of a lot of it.
Right.
So I think it is somewhat different. I mean, it's there's a lot of different notes and levels of things of what we did. And when we have a committee, you have multiple people in there, to hear it. We had, department heads and things like that. So, I don't even know what else to say at this point. I'm just gonna stop.
Councilman Thacker?
Yeah, I do have one of the things that I wanted to address here. You have some notes on here, don't have some, we're missing some dollar figures that would say the difference is the recommended versus the request, to see how that impacts. But one of the things too is I think any of this that we're doing, that if we're going to potentially approve something, it's going to impact them department heads. And if we don't, that's what we did. We allowed every department head that wanted to come to us and see us, we did. And I know two of the ones that I know they have a swing here that it's impacted, one of them being the building inspections. They had some requests in there, and we asked them to follow up and to bring information to us. They never did follow up and bring us the information. It's a $40,000 under the building inspections for contractual services, but we never did get a scope of the contractual services. So we did not approve that. That's why we didn't cut. It wasn't a cut, but we didn't approve additional for that. And the code enforcement, I believe we did do some work with that. The gasoline, we did do the ones, but I mean, you can't, if you don't see all that. And then we had another one too with, and he happens to be here as, on the detention, juvenile detention. His budget didn't change, but he took some off the food allowance and changed, asked it for the vehicle that we talked about the other night. But the budget didn't change any. But if you only approve this part of it, you cut $20,000 out of his budget for juvenile detention. And if we don't give each of those department heads an opportunity to talk, as same as the commissioner's budget, there was a lot of movement in the commissioner's budget that they're here. And so if we were to accept this motion, then we would be in turn impacting departments without giving them the luxury to come before us and to make their points. So that's the only thing I want to say is, and I can't support unless I see all the numbers in comparison and a total, which we were able to do with the 4.75 and the 5%. Thank you.
You.
Can I add one more thing?
Sure. Councilman Thies?
Also to take into consideration, and I know we can't, do on hopeful, cross our fingers, but we did have to add the $500,000 into the budget for the body cameras. And so when you look at the discrepancy and things like that, I'm hopeful, trying to be optimistic that we'll get the grant on that. But when you look at that and then compare it to last year's, that brings the number down a little bit closer on those operating expenses too. So I hope.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Just one other point to that. The body cams are in my exceptions. No, they didn't make it. And I'm hopeful that they get the grant as well, and that'll bring my numbers that much further down too.
Councilman Thompson?
Yeah, I just want to say I appreciate the discussion, Mr. Thacker. When I look at this, I see clerk's office, which is just the sheriff's office, as requested. So I'm assuming, at first glance, this is obviously in their favor because that's what they requested. The rest of these as recommended by the budget committee. So I appreciate the insight on some of the things about juvenile center detention. That's stuff that I was aware of. I'm looking at this thing, it's either the department head has requested it or you guys have recommended it. So that's all I want to say. I appreciate, the insight.
Is there
As
twos,
I
threes,
said,
and-
these are 2s, 3s, and 4s, they're not personnel. These don't address personnel. They're-
I think something that probably would have been more helpful too is, what was cut? Because when I look at this, it kind of like what Councilman Thompson is saying, it says as recommended, as requested, as recommended. So then, you look at this and it seems very positive. But then I would like to try to, and I, like I said, I'd have to really cross-reference things as to then what was removed. If so much was removed, then I'd like to, kind of take a look at what that was exactly. Again, on this part of it, I really, according to this, we're more in agreement than disagreement. And I still think the biggest disagreement is where we could deal with and handle with salaries and going through the whole recommendation in the next step of the process, because I feel like that's really the meat of it. But according to this, it looks like a lot of it is, as recommended, as requested, without seeing specifically what is cut. So, I guess, in looking at it, I want to know what the biggest obstacle is, because we have to move forward. We have, people and employees that count on it. And I'm absolutely in agreement with you. I'm not for raising taxes or anything like that. As a matter of fact, I'm not fond of them. I've got a son that, he lives here and he pays quite a bit in income tax just because of some of the way things work, and I see how it impacts him. But, we're looking out for the taxpayers too, and I get where you're coming at, but I just want to know what our biggest hurdle is, because, there's some wants and things I didn't get either, or that I compromised on, and so moving forward, if this seems to be mostly in agreement, then I think we need to take on the hardest part of it, which is the compensation aspect of it.
Mr. President,
Councilman Wilson?
the biggest thing is 4.92%, or a million over revenue. We need to get that down. And going back to the 2021 budgets, with these exceptions, I'm sorry, I don't have an exact figure, but it substantially decreases it, because it's starting at 3.7 to begin with.
Can you please let us know some of the things that were cut then, specifics?
Well, a lot of the things are, as you recommended, there are things, a lot of the vehicles are cut. And any of the things that are not in here are things that can be brought back next year and requested an appropriation for. Just because they're not in the budget right now, we can appropriate them for them next year. They would just have to make the effort to come before the council and ask for it.
And
Not necessarily, we don't have to approve all of the appropriation requests.
Mr. President,
Councilman Wager?
I think what we have here is a considerable amount of difference in philosophy about the deficit. I mean, I think Auditor Bramble explained last meeting that reducing that operating balance, was the difference in the amount of spending in this budget. I think his expertise in being an auditor for the state Board of Accounts gave me great confidence that we were not making any danger to the taxpayers here, because as a couple of the department heads pointed out, at the end of the year, every year, they've had a substantial amount of money left in their accounts. And those were big departments. That's a safety net. That operating balance is a safety net in those departments. That's money that is put into those departments to be sure that they have enough money. And we still have a considerable amount of money in those operating accounts. That's what Jim Bramble knows how to do. He is a certified public accountant. We have confidence in his ability. He's very, very smart. Just like Earl Elliott over in the city council, they've got a great guy over there. He advises them, and he knows what he's doing. And they depend on him to keep them in a safe position. And since he's been over there, their position, financial position, has improved remarkably. And Jim here, and also Mr. Sheehan in the auditor's office, that they're very wise, and they know how to tell us, you can't spend that much money. And our operating balance and our investments have grown and grown and grown, and every year, we make more and more money on our investments, and that's what keeps us safe and grows our money and for our taxpayers, and that's why we don't have to raise taxes when we spend a budget like this, and that's how we're able to pay our employees a nice raise in these recent years. And so I just believe that Auditor Bramble is correct when he says we were able to lower those operating balances in this year, and still we'll be able to make money on our investments and not endanger our accounts. I believe he's a smart dude. That's what I think. And also, it's your cowboy boots that you wear. Mr. President.
I don't think he has his boots on today.
He's not wearing them today.
Councilman Weger just proved my point in why we need to go back to the 2021 budget, because there are things, for example, if we adopt the 2022 budget, the $500,000, just speaking personally from the council, the $500,000 that's in the council budget that was specifically for payroll adjustments and the safety net that she referred to is taken away from our budget if we go back to the 2020, if we adopt the 2022 budget. And there are other line items in there that were put in there for a reason, and they just were blatantly cut out and put back in the general fund.
And Mr. President,
And
excuse me, I'm sorry,
Please,
I'm
thank you.
sorry, I
Thank you.
apologize.
Thank you. And so, having lost the train of thought, I guess I made my point.
Mr. President,
Councilman Weger?
and Mr. Auditor, could you tell us, when we remove that money, then what happens then? What would we do if we took that $500,000 out of the council budget? Would we be in danger?
Obviously not.
Because,
I mean, it's been used, it's just been spread out over other departments, I guess you could say. It's part of the raise that was figured in there, because actually what it's done over the years is been squirreled away and not used for salary adjustment, or anything else for that matter.
But the Association of Indiana Counties says that what, we need to stop thinking of each individual account as only that, but a pile of money that you can transfer around as you need it.
No, not really. The revenue is restricted in funds because it's
Certain
used for a
ways, of
special
course.
purpose. But I mean, you're looking at cash flows, you look at the county as a
But-
whole.
We're not going down the pipes, is that correct? Well, that's good. And not close?
I'd say we're a long way from going down the pipe.
Mr. President, I'm curious then, what effect does it have for the $100,000 that we appropriated last week? Where does that come from if we take the $500,000 out of the council's budget? So then where does it, I mean, it's just whatever the balance is, it goes away?
Our balance, at the end of 2021, presume it just goes back to, it's in the general fund.
Like,
According to the
like
2020
any other
budget?
appropriation, if it's not
Right.
contracted for, it tied.
So if we didn't have it in there, we couldn't have asked for that appropriation, which is gonna go towards the employee compensation. That's the reason for it to be in there. And that's an exception in my list.
President Laverne,
Councilman Thacker?
I'd like to call for question.
Sure.
It's not an exception, that's just, I'm sorry, that's just part of the 2021 budget.
Yes, Councilman Thacker?
So call for question means that we would vote on whether we want to terminate the discussion at this point. And a two-thirds majority calls on question, and then we go straight to a vote if it passes, if the call question passes. Correct, Mr. Effner?
Does everyone understand that?
Repeat, I didn't hear you, I'm sorry. Repeat, please.
So I call for question, so whenever that happens, then the chairman then would ask for a vote. And if two-thirds majority vote in favor of the question, we terminate discussion. Then the next thing after that, if it passes, then you go straight to a vote on the motion that's made. Or if it fails, you continue discussion. But, you know, what the position I have with the motion is I know enough of it to know how I want to vote on the motion, so that's why I call for question.
In the middle of a motion, that's correct, too?
Under parliamentary procedures, yes.
But you need two-thirds vote to do that?
Honestly,
That's correct.
I think you can go.
That's right.
Well, it has a higher threshold of passing. It has to have two-thirds to pass. And then you're done discussing the motion. And then if it fails, you can resume discussion. It's a way to manage a meeting so that we don't spend an hour and a half on two motions.
Clarification,
I think-
we were voting on a question? I don't understand what that was.
Voting to end the discussion.
Which require 5 out of 7.
Yes, yes, sir.
I think that, yeah, I agree the discussion could carry on forever, and I think as Councilman Thacker alluded to, there's probably some minds already set one way or another, no matter how much discussion you have. I think that's probably fair. You know, I provided this lengthy amount of time for discussion for several reasons, but as we've seen, there's a lot of information here. I thought it was fair to do that, so that's why I've allowed this to go on much longer than what we're used to. there something you're researching, Mr. Effner, or are you,
I'm looking at that, I think that's.
just to make sure procedurally
That's
we do
correct.
everything correct order? I mean, it could either, you call it a question, or just call for a vote, a regular vote.
On the motion, or vote to end the discussion?
Because potentially it's going to be the same impact, presumably.
Well, the motion doesn't require two-thirds.
I believe the chair does have the autonomy to make that decision if you want to go straight to the vote of the motion, or if you don't want to vote just on the question. I believe as a chairman, you can decide that, sir.
I believe it should be said.
Second.
Is everyone clear on what's,
To end the discussion. 5 votes to end the discussion.
Councilman Thies?
So could you state like how the question is, vote aye, like
Yeah,
as
we
a
just-
clerk?
But if, even with that,
If you're voting aye, you're voting
Oh, my gosh.
to
Sorry.
end the
End
debate and have a vote on the motion. Yes.
or you just, presumably it's just an extra step.
Yeah, and what reason they go ahead and have that is because if there's 3 people here that want to continue discussing it, they would vote no, and then we go back to discussing. And that's the only reason an actual call to question is a motion in itself.
Is everybody
That's
clear
why
on
it
what,
needs a second. Yeah.
is everybody clear on what the call
Yeah.
is and how this works?
So an aye would be you're done talking about it, a nay, you want to continue talking about it.
And then the motion we have before us, call to vote.
Yeah, if the call to question passes, if the call to question fails,
Continue discussion.
they'll you decide.
Right. Okay. Everyone clear? Just want to make sure everybody knows what they're going to be voting on.
I have one more question. If it fails, and we go to vote, can we discuss in between? Okay, that's,
If the call to question fails, yes, you would continue discussion, because that's essentially what this is for.
What's that?
Call to question is essentially to demand a resolution to vote, I guess you would say. Everyone clear on that? You with us, Mr. Otter, still? All right, we have a call to question. So an aye is for ending discussion and moving towards a vote. A nay, you want to continue discussion. Just want to make sure everybody's clear.
Do we need a second on that call to question? Oh, Vicky did it? Okay.
Okay. Mr. Otter, could I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Thacker.
Aye.
Mr. Norris.
Aye.
Ms. Thies.
aye.
Ms. Swager.
Aye.
Ms. Wilson.
Aye.
Mr. Thompson. Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye. Call to question. Approved. So, with that, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please. We all know what the motion is before us. We have a motion on the floor from Councilwoman Wilson, a second from Councilman Thompson. Does everyone still recall what the motion is? I hope. Everybody clear? If not, please state so now. All right. Mr. Otter, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Thacker.
Nay.
Mr. Norris.
Nay.
Ms. Thies.
Nay.
Ms. Swager.
Nay.
Ms. Wilson.
Aye.
Mr. Thompson. Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye. I thought nay, nay. I got my two backwards, nay. I apologize. So, everyone knows where we're at.
No.
So it was
Back to where we
defeated,
started.
right,
Yes,
defeated
that's
6-1.
Well, back to where we have,
Did you copy that, Judy?
well, exactly, yeah. No.
Okay, so we have before us information regarding the compensation, as we spoke about earlier. For discussion, the employee raises for 2022, the sliding scale system, the additional requests to employees. I believe that is it in a nutshell.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Effner.
a little bit, since we voted to,
Mike?
it
It's
is,
on. Just sit up next to you.
sorry. Since they're voted to reconsider the measure, I think just to clarify the record, I think I would probably have a vote on the original budget as it was approved Tuesday. Yes,
What we previously started with.
yes. Just to make the record clear.
So we don't have to get deep into the details, just reinstate.
Yes.
The twos, threes,
Without-
and fours.
Okay.
Would we vote on it or just read it?
I think we need to vote on it.
Everybody copy that?
Say it again.
Could you please restate that?
Well, I think since we have reconsidered it, I think we need to have a vote to reinstate it. I think for all practical purposes, it was taken off the board, so I think we need to reinstate that, which as I recall
Let's
was,
just,
Two,
since go
threes,
back to
and
square
fours.
one. So take a motion, entertain a motion to reinstate where we previously were with the budget to start the meeting.
So moved.
So a motion on the floor from Councilwoman Thies, second from Councilman Thacker. Any questions where we're at?
Is that twos, threes, and fours, or the whole thing?
Twos, threes, and fours where we started the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
what we had all,
Yeah.
You
also
done
voted
4.75 last week.
It's what we
I don't know
passed.
what you want to do.
4.75.
Back to where we started the meeting, just to probably, be simplistic as possible. Everybody clear? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Thacker?
Aye.
Mr. Norris?
Nay.
Ms. Thies?
Aye.
Ms. Swager?
Aye.
Ms. Wilson?
Nay.
Mr. Thompson? Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye. Motion carries. All right. Offer this time for discussion regarding the compensation. Again, the ceiling is essentially set at 4.75%. Everybody's clear on that, I hope. So discussion regarding the employee raises for 2022. We are right now operating under the presumption that the twos, threes, and fours are staying the same. Just want to make sure everybody's tracking. We'll discuss the raises, the sliding scale, and the additional request for employees. I believe it was 4 employees, is that correct? Yes.
What?
Sorry, what was
What?
that?
The 4 employees, that's part of the salary ordinance as well. Oh, we can vote on that. I'm sorry, misspoke on that. But appropriations for those positions. Misspoke when I said salary
Okay,
ordinance.
and you
Apologize.
just stated that.
Is everyone clear on that?
Would you state it that way, appropriation for,
I just did.
okay.
Let's just have the discussion. I mean, there's not a motion, let's just have discussion. Yeah.
Okay.
So, anyone would like to start, please do so. Councilwoman Thies, you're on the buzzer.
I believe, and again, as much, as we can spin and do circles and things, I do think that conversation is always healthy, and I appreciate that tonight. one of the things that we had discussed, and I think it's separate from this, so I just want to clarify that. We had talked about the possibility of a bonus coming from the 2021 budget. If we're able to do that, I believe that's a whole separate entity to decide. Other than that, yeah, we'll have to, I guess, get that on the agenda. But then the other thing that, I would like to look at, and I think I'm pretty clear on where I'm at, is I feel pretty strongly about keeping it at 4.75 rather than stipends. You guys are more than welcome to bring up that part of it again. That's what we're all here for. But it's one that I feel like pays off in the end, more so for our employees when it comes to retirement benefits and year after year pay.
Thank you, Councilman Ortiz. Councilman Thacker?
Yes, I think that the conversation is a great point, and I've heard a number of times, and I've listened to it, but some people aren't in favor of the sliding scale on the elected officials. And what I would hope to do is, if you guys would ask the auditors, we had that number, what that totality was. Before we do the appropriations, they could find out if you don't want to do that, and instead you want to put that money towards the increasing of the sheriff's pay or other expenditures. I think that's a fair thing to do. And we're jailers, I'm sorry, did I say sheriff's? Oh, yeah, for the jailers and the 911 dispatch. So if that's something that you guys want to do, is I think it would benefit all of us to give them, the auditors, the heads up that we need to do that, so we know how to redistribute it if that's the choice.
That's, what you're doing here is essentially setting a cap on salaries. The salary ordinance tells you how to distribute it.
Right, and that's what I understand, but I believe President Loudermilk said that he wanted to have some discussion at this point. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah, that's all I was saying is, by doing that, we don't have to do that tonight. I totally agree, but I think if you're wanting to do something next month, you should, I would just give you heads up what that is, so that they can look at it. If you could bring back, which I was telling that to Councilman Norris, that when we did the budget, we had all of those ahead of us, right in front of us on two different screens. And we could ask you to put up something and see the impact, what it was to the total budget. By coming in less on the total budget, I think we minimize that expenditure over revenue. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilman Thompson?
I spoke last week, it was 5%, so there was a lot of discussion about stipend. Some people are against it. I think it's a matter of, that's what I said last week, a matter of where an employee is in their career, what is better. Personally, as one council, I think I'm for a 4%, where I have larger stipend. But from my understanding, we vote on percentage and the stipend is something.
You mean the
You're
bonus?
talk-
The bonus?
bonus.
That would
talk-
be for 2021 if you're wanting to do it at the end of this year. It'd be an adjustment to, an amendment to the 2021 salary ordinance and the 2021 budget. You'd have to transfer funds out of CARES if that's where intentions are, still are.
We had 2.4 million of the CARES Act, that roughly.
Yes, somewhere around there last week.
I can't get it to come on. Can you hear that? Did pick it up?
And just,
You finished? Councilman Norris, did you have anything you wanted to add? Councilman Wager?
Well, I mean, guess I'd go on the record tonight to say that I think, the 4.75 is something that stands up for these employees in the times that we're living in right now. I heard on the news today, gasoline's going up, and I sound like a broken record. Bread is $2.99 a loaf. These folks got kids and grandkids that they're raising, and gasoline, God help the poor soul that's driving a diesel. That's all I can tell you. It's really tough out there, and we did what we could to try to make life easier. We don't want you guys to go get another job, that's for sure, because I don't know how we're going to replace you. You're already irreplaceable, but if you leave, you're really irreplaceable. So I hope that these folks will cast their vote to keep you here at 4.75%. Thank you.
Councilwoman Wilson?
I just want to go on record that I concur with what Councilman Thompson said about the raises and bonus should be separated and given both.
Well, I think any bonus would not be, it cannot be voted on tonight anyway. But obviously, I think it's important and healthy to have that discussion if you're taking all things into consideration. So I think it definitely is worth speaking about. I've stated my position numerous times on where I'm at. I think I'm at 4% for me. I said that from the beginning. I think 4% is a very good raise. I know city employees were just given half of that, 2%. I've talked to a lot of people that would really love to have a 4% raise, not only in county government, but outside of county government, and outside of government in particular. I think we kind of get wrapped up in some of the nomenclature at times. We keep referring to things as stipends. This is a bonus. Stipends a little bit different. The stipends, what has been proposed by the budget committee for jailers, for example. A clothing allowance is kind of a stipend as well, in my eyes. This is something that is different. I think 4% for me is a very generous position. The reason why I've been cautious with the 5% is not to be stingy, but it's with the knowledge that we have that there is going to be an employee classification and compensation study done, and I can only imagine what that will do moving forward. I mean, we don't know as we sit here, but nobody's salary is going to go down as a result of that. Even if the study was adverse to some, I don't think there's any member of this council that's going to take away from somebody. I can't imagine that we're in a position where anybody would even consider doing that. And talking with Commissioner Mike Morris last week, he said when they implemented this current classification system, that first year, the obligation was over $800,000 in payroll adjustments. So I can only imagine what that might be in today's money. I had to presume over $1 million. But I don't know, as I sit here, we don't know what those results will look like. The hope is that we clean up some of the issues we have with the employee compensation plan as it currently is, and I think we're moving in the right direction currently. But that's part of why I'm at 4% and not 5%. I also like the idea of using CARES Act funds to give people a bonus this year. We keep hearing about gas going up and bread and meat and all those things. Believe me, I know. I've got 7 mouths to feed at home. I get it as much as anybody else, and I'm not rich. So I get that it all helps, but that extra 0.75% over the course of a year is not going to be as impactful as a bonus to hit the employees' accounts in November. And that's just where I stand on it, and I'm firm on it, and I truly believe that. And I've talked to numerous county employees that agree. They said, we need the help now. We don't need an extra % next year. And I know they all believe that. I can't begin to be so naive as to think that everybody feels that way. But the ones I've talked to have said that. I would like to see, we have to, if we're going to do a bonus, we have to come up with some type of plan on who that impacts, what that demographic looks like in terms of full-time employee and/or part-time employees. And if it's part-time employee, how you determine that. And if it's a full-time employee, what the scope of that is in terms of how long they've been employed with the county. I think all those things have to be considered. But with that said, for me, I think 4% is the way to go, and I think a bonus of $1,500 for the full-time employees coupled with that is the way to go as well. So I stand firm in that. I stand firm in what I've said before about not supporting the sliding scale system, raise system for elected officials. And it's not to slight any elected officials. I just feel like the money is better spent being given to those that are working for the elected officials. And that's just my position on it as one person. And I've been that way since it was introduced to me.
Can I have a point of clarification?
Sure.
I guess for myself and to make sure I see where things are coming from. Clarification-wise, I definitely feel like a bonus in this year, and I know it's a separate issue. I just wanted to clarify that. I kind of mentioned it, 2021's been awful for a lot of people in so many ways, especially with absences due to illness and beyond. What I would like to see before we make and I guess, are we voting tonight on the actual percentage? Is that what I'm gathering, or is that at the next meeting?
Percentage raise?
Uh-huh.
Yes,
Okay.
I
Okay.
presume it's tonight.
Okay. And then, so then I guess I don't need clarification on that then. I just wanted to make sure that I do support that for this year, but rather the percentage total for next year, so.
Any other thoughts or comments? If there are none,
Can I just,
sure.
all right, suppose if you want to go for the 4% raise in your salary ordinance, and you pass these numbers as they're presented, that leaves you with some money that you've already got allocated for whatever changes may come with that study. You've got it. Some of, whatever it is, at least some of it's in the budget presently. If you when you go to salary ordinance time, you decide something less than what is here on these numbers. And it saves me a whole lot of time going back and recalculating them all. Much the same way, I guess, as your salary adjustment would have been.
Any additional comments, questions?
Jim, would you leave that in each department, like in the general fund, or would you put it all in one location, like in the council budget?
You just leave it all where it's at.
I'd like to make a motion. Salary increases to be set at 4% and not include the sliding scale.
So we have a motion on the floor by Councilman Thompson, a second by Councilwoman Wilson. And that is a 4% raise, salary raise for all eligible employees. Correct.
And does that eliminate the changes in clothing allowances and jailer stipends and?
Is that something
No,
to
we're
do with
not.
salary ordinance, or you're gonna do that now?
Let's just do that salary ordinance.
Salary, yeah.
Yep. Let's do that.
So you want to appropriate 4% across the board?
Correct.
Is everyone clear on where we're at? Any questions about the motion?
I heard you guys say it down there, this is, as it applies to the salary ordinance, right?
As it applies to base pay salary increases.
Pay rate increases of 4% for all eligible employees.
And this also, if you're taking away the sliding scale, then that's 4% to the elected officials as well and department heads. I just wanted to make, just for clarification.
Yes.
Because we didn't factor that in when we did the sliding scale. We didn't put that, their pay increase in there because they had the sliding scale. So, I mean, that's all, that they're
All
considered
across,
employees,
yes.
okay?
Yes.
Any additional questions? Appears there are none. Mr. Otter, cover roll call vote, please.
Mr. Thacker,
Nay.
Mr. Norris,
Aye.
Ms. Thies,
Nay.
Ms. Weger, Ms. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye. Motion carries. So next month will be time for salary ordinances, and we'll offer discussion at that time for any potential bonuses. And then we're going to have to have a request to transfer funds for potential bonuses for the sunshine meeting. So we'll have to make that request to the auditor's office. Any questions about what to expect next month?
Council Laudermilk, when
Yes, Ms.
I
Miller.
prepare that request, you want me to prepare it for the total number of full-time employees or positions that we have at the 1,500, and then you can adjust accordingly?
Yeah, I think, yeah, total full-time, and then we can adjust accordingly from there.
So the
And then
total
we
number
can-
of positions.
We can set parameters on what that may look like. So if we max
next
out
week.
the total full-time employees that we have at this point as our ceiling,
And as we talked about the last meeting, if somebody has 6 months, will it be prorated versus 3 months prorating or
yeah, and I think-
potentially?
Yeah, I think that's something we can discuss.
I mean, that's what they talked about with HR, to find out who would be eligible for that.
Yeah, I think those are things that will be discussed, should be
Okay.
discussed then, and when the appropriate time is for that pay to be dispersed, and who fits that demographic to receive that pay.
Do any of these need action?
You need to, the ordinance or resolution for appropriations and tax rates, you need to officially adopt that.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
The ordinance or resolution for appropriations and tax rates, it's 2 or 3 page document. It has the casino riverboats, the first line, and the list of funds. And it has all of your levy funds and tax tax rates, adopted budget, adopted levy, adopted tax rate. It actually covers what was sent to you earlier today. It was at the 4.75, but it covers it. You can adopt it, close the meeting out. And then we will be over appropriated. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to, don't kill it, Jimmy, don't kill it. And we can adjust accordingly later if we need to, in 2022.
I don't,
This one, it should have been at your spot when you said, it's gotten buried. One thing I may point out on this, on the very last page, there's 2 questions that we probably need to make sure we address those as well. Your intent to issue debt after December 1 and before January 1. I am not aware of any debt that you have on the books or in the works. So that would be a no. Yeah, so I mean, we don't have any new bond issues. And then the other one is that we state our intent to file a shortfall appeal after December 1 and before December 31. As to my knowledge, there's no shortfall appeal in the process either. So those are both would be no. So just so you know before you. Did you find it, Marie? And does it say generated 10/18? Because you would have gotten last week too. Yeah, but I would just want to make sure they're looking at. Marie, did you see where it has the generated date right there? And it's 10/18. Okay. This one I wanted. Right. So, but they voted on it as amended, so this is just for signatures, right? Okay, so they don't have to address that again. Did you find it? Do you want mine?
yeah, I did. I got the other paperwork. That-
Oh, what are we supposed to do?
Is this on
Bob, are we supposed to do something different with that?
resolution for fiscal policies?
This is part of
Okay, so just need a motion?
yes,
I think so. As presented.
and that adopts your appropriation account, your levy amount.
Okay, so just adopt, just a motion to accept. All right, everybody have the document now? With that, I entertain a motion to approve the ordinance resolution for appropriations and tax rates.
So moved.
We have a motion on the floor to approve by Councilman Norris, second by Councilman Thacker. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Thacker? Aye. Mr. Norris?
Aye.
Ms. Thies?
Aye.
Ms. Wager?
Aye.
Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Ms. Thompson? Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Do you need
Moving
on record?
along, we had honorary resolutions last week, and it was the resolution regarding the casino. Resolution 2021-18. It appears, the information we were given with the resolution last week did not provide some of the updated numbers. We have fresh, updated numbers with a amended resolution. Does everyone have a copy of the amended? Does everyone clear on what the changes are? Mr. After?
No, I just need to have a
Right. It's one baby steps, you want to make sure that paper first. Everybody has it in front of you? Everybody's clear on the updated information? So much like we did earlier, reconsider. So, entertain a motion to reconsider. Resolution 2021-18. Motion reconsidered by Councilwoman Wager,
Second.
second by Councilman Norris. Any questions? Mr. Iyer, have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Thacker? Mr. Norris?
Aye.
Ms. Thies?
Aye.
Ms. Wigger? Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye. Motion reconsidered
Yes.
passes. So again, we have updated information. Any thoughts, questions, concerns about the amended resolution? Councilman Thompson.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the current numbers as follows. That the mistakes for what was sent and what we have now in front of us, the investment to the construction, looks like on the third line down on the third paragraph, to $190 million from the $100 million that was stated last week. The permanent casino jobs to 750 permanent casino jobs. Last week it was stated at 600 permanent jobs. And the annual contribution in net new economic activity from $148 million to $150 million.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor and a second. Motion by Councilman Thompson, second by Councilman Wilson. Questions, concerns, or vote? Stronger, I ask roll call, please.
Mr. Thacker?
Aye.
Mr. Norris?
Aye.
Ms. Thies?
Aye.
Ms. Wigger?
Aye.
Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Make a motion to approve as amended.
Second.
Motion on the floor to approve is amended by Councilman Thompson, second by Councilman Wilson. Any questions? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Thacker?
Aye.
Mr. Norris?
Aye.
Ms. Thies?
Aye.
Ms. Wigger?
Aye.
Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye. Motion carries. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So,
Everybody.
Everybody's on that one.
I make a motion.
Motion to adjourn by Councilman Thies, second by Councilman Thacker. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Meeting adjourned.